Dhiraj, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
Hi, Ashu. Very good. Thank you so much.
Dhiraj, this is an exciting discussion. I've been looking forward to this discussion, right? We've done about, I think, 200 plus interactions on Asia Tech Journal.
Wow.
Fortunately, unfortunately, right? I think recruitment, skilling, placement, in especially the blue collar category, right? I think was a segment that we, for some reason, did not, touch upon, come across. But I think, that just makes it so much more important, right? Because this is a very, very important category for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
One, there has been a policy push, right? The government has been extremely sensitive about this entire thing of, one on skilling, reskilling, second on employment for blue collar, right? I think they've been wanting to sort of expand that. And I think most importantly, COVID has really changed the way industry was being conceived of, right? I think we're talking about a very, very different landscape going forward. Thus, this becomes a very important discussion, and especially given the size we are, right? We have much larger problems at hand,
Correct.
and I think the global landscape has kind of changed, right? The industry dynamics have changed, which is going to, and this is possibly a segment which is going to evangelize, enable, and I think play a very critical role at a foundational level to ensure that India is ready for the next wave of consumption that comes in, right? So, and we're going to cover many of those aspects through the course of conversation. But like I said, right, this becomes an important conversation. In
Right.
that, Neeraj, before we start, right, I'd love you to, quick round of introduction would be helpful, and from there we dive into the conversation today.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. I think it's both a pleasure and an honor to be on Asia Tech Journal, and I have been watching your videos and the length and breadth of industry, leaders, startup, especially enthusiasts that you have covered. So, really honored to be part of your, interview today. So I'm a chartered accountant, by the way, 96 batch, and sounds like a long time ago. but journey has been very, very fulfilling, to say the least. I think I started off initially as in a typical CA role with a bank, multinational
Right.
bank, but then soon gradually moved to business leadership roles in sales, marketing, and product management. And when the insurance liberalization happened in
Right.
2001, so I joined insurance industry and stayed there till 2016. Look,
Right.
15 long years. And during that journey, I kind of moved away from active business leadership roles to then digital and strategy roles towards
Right.
second half of my career. And 2016, I joined a skill development training institute, which was run by my friends, and
Mhm.
they asked me to come and join as a promoter.
Right.
It was a complete change, very unconventional industry and
Mhm.
very small as compared to multinationals like
Right.
GE or Apollo Munichs of the world where I worked. But I think there's always been a entrepreneur inside of me, because even when I was working for corporates, I would look at my book where I'm contributing 70, 80 crores of top line. And I always used
Right.
to wonder, what am I doing, making crores of rupees for my corporates,
Right.
and while I can do it myself. But then, of course, there's always that risk and the capital and other things which are always, holding one back.
Right.
But then I took this as a pseudo entrepreneurship, because things were kind of set, and yet I
Right.
was being thrown into a very different world to lead a company. But that's where I think the SkillSKonnect seeds were sown, and I think everything happens in life for a reason, and I truly believe in that. So when I went over there, I realized the large ecosystem of skill development, which Modi government launched as a
Right.
separate ministry in 2014.
Right.
And I was kind of awestruck. I said, amazing. I mean, the numbers are mind-boggling, and there is literally zero digital,
Right.
interplay in that industry. So I kind of introduced a lot of digitalization and automation in that company, and we grew, I think, 2.5 times in over a period of 2 years.
Right.
And that kept on giving me the confidence that I need to get into this space as soon as possible. So 2018, we launched SkillSKonnect, and we kind of started work on the product. So initial thought was to create a social networking platform like a LinkedIn for blue
Right.
collar workforce, who can interact with each other, search for trainings and search for jobs, and also connect with each other. But my well-wishers in investor world kind of advised me against it. They said,
Right.
it's going to suck up a lot of money, Dhiraj. Don't go there. It's ahead of time.
Right.
Focus on hiring related value service, which I think is
Right.
picking up. And I think we had seen platforms like Work India and Apna started to, come up and move fast.
Right.
So that's who I am, and here we are today. I mean, driving this business. Yeah.
Heartening, Dhiraj, heartening. I very firmly believe this, right? If you want to really scale a company, put a banker at task, right? Right. I've been one, and I just there are two extremes, right? Interesting extremes, right? One is the way they understand numbers, right? And selling a product which is so non-sexy, right? And continuing to hustle hard, and the fact that they hit that point of realization very quickly that, listen, what am I doing, right, with my life? There's so much more that I can go on to do, right?
Correct.
And create more and more companies, right? So I'd love to see more bankers do that. But this is interesting, right? And like I said, right, at the outset of a conversation, this is a very important, very interesting one, right? Because the paradigm has really changed, right? But before we go on to discussing about what COVID has, for example, done, how the industry is kind of changed, what I'd love to understand is the current construct of SkillSKonnect, Gazab Jobs, right?
Sure.
How have you done in the last couple of years that you've been at it? How have you scaled? For example, how's the leadership expanded? Many of those things I'd love to understand.
Sure. Thank you. It's a good question. So I think SkillSKonnect, initially when we started off in 2018, I think the first year we were building up the product and understanding, what's the market expecting from a digital product. And when we did some beta testing in 2019, we got very huge responses from training ecosystem. And I think at the core of it, what we are trying to address is hiring, which means that all these. So India, as you know, is a very large country, and we are blessed to have such a youthful population among us. But not very many people know that literally every year about 25 to 30 lakh young people drop out of school or college. And on top of it, I think 1.25 crore youngsters pass 12 or 10 standard every year and try and get into a labor market. But then think of a typical Indian mindset. I think it's a top 10 percentile of the students who score really well. They actually have a good go at decent jobs or careers ahead in white collar world. But then a large portion of the balance, 90% or 80% or even the 50 percentile marks or 60 percentile marks, right, they are the people who are struggling a lot and dropouts. Right. So we went after that 1 crore number who are either dropping out of education or are scoring very, very below average marks, which is where the biggest confusion and the anxieties starts to come in. So that's where we started, focusing, and we figured that the vocational skill training is the area where a lot of these people are present, or the undergrad colleges in tier 2, tier 3, cities and towns of the country, the Bharat. It is our core market because they are the people who are aspiring and trying to get into some job, into some industry, so that they can earn their livelihood and support their families. So over the years, last couple of years, when the COVID struck in 2020, we started helping them with jobs, and especially in areas like logistics, like healthcare, because those were still being in demand despite lockdowns and all. And very happy to share, we basically grew exponentially in 2020. We aggregated almost 500,000 job seekers in a span of 1 year with very, very frugal team and resources. But we also started realizing that if we were to go and aggregate these job seekers using conventional digital marketing route, which typical platform companies does, like Work India or Apna, it again is going to suck up a lot of money. And I think it's a very highly competitive space. Right. We learned from Naukri. So Naukri did try blue collar early in 2010s and whatever, right, but they backed out because the market was not ready or people were not ready. So we flipped the entire model on its head and launched Gazab Jobs. So, and that's where I think today our unique differentiation also emerges. So Gazab Jobs is a SaaS platform, and right, we offer it to vocational training institutes, ITIs, polytechnic colleges, BTech colleges in tier 2, tier 3 towns and cities, right, whose students is where they're trying to place, which they're not able to do very effectively. Right. Because they're constrained by their size. I mean, these are training institute which graduates 100 people in a year or 500 people in a year. And for them to have a large placement teams to invite good employers every 3-6 months it's not feasible. It's not happening. Right. But then if our Gazab Jobs product, when it sits in their institute, so it launches itself as a jobs website, a private label job website, right, in the name of that institute. And then it starts to unlock a lot of value for their business as well as their students. So this is where we come in and help their students get placed
Interesting.
into good brands.
Interesting. Dhiraj, that's a very interesting point, right? Quickly, numerically, how many cities, for example, are you operational in? How many institutions are already using the SaaS platform, right? I'm going to talk more about the employers and
Sure,
and that number at a later point, right? But
sure,
how many
sure,
institutions and how many kids, for example, right, or job seekers, right,
sure.
are on the platform currently?
Sure, sure. So very happy to share that on the last count, our Gazab Job customers who have adopted our technology,
Mhm.
we are now present in 100 cities, which
Interesting.
means in 100 cities, these customers of ours have a center where are training students in various skills,
Mhm.
which could range from logistics to healthcare to hospitality to sales or whatever.
Interesting.
And we today have 75 plus training institutes, ITIs, colleges, job consulting companies with us who are using Gazab Jobs.
Mhm.
And as we speak today, close to 25,000 students or alumni or job seekers in their ecosystem are searching for jobs on our platform. But the bigger story is that this 25,000 is the one who they have engaged right now to
Right.
come and join their Gazab
Interesting.
Jobs. But if you look at what they've done in the past 5 or 10 years, this 25,000 can easily be multiplied by 20 or 15 because those are the people that now they're going back and
Right.
asking them to come back to
Right.
apply for jobs on their platform.
Interesting. Dheeraj, what I'd love to understand, right? And I'm moving a little towards the policy, right? And I mean, the
Sure.
government is extremely, focused on skill development. I mean, not just this government,
Yes.
but even governments in the past, right?
Yes.
Because I think they've realized that India is a fairly challenging market, right? Now,
Yeah.
for a lot of global capital to come in, and I'm talking pre-COVID, right? Lastly, for a lot of capital to, for example, come in, investors have been apprehensive. While, of course, we've been a very, very large market, but we are an extremely fragmented market, right? And that could essentially mean
Very.
that they may the effort and the ROI could be very significantly different from what they anticipate, right? On acquiring a certain customer, right, or an LTV around a certain customer, and that is the reason there's been a huge focus and sort of a certain homogeneity, right? That policies have been trying to sort of bring in to ensure that institutionalization of labor force happens, right? And you had
Right.
institutions like SDC, right, which have been there, which have come in and tried to sort of basically evangelize the cause of skill development. They've incentivized this
Yes.
and so on and so forth, right? Now, this is
Yes.
not something which is new, right? This is something which has been happening for the longest time, right? This is not limited
Mm.
to tier A cities. This is beyond tier A cities, right? Where, in fact, to an extent, this is all going very, very rural as well, right?
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
when you look at the impact of all of that which has happened, right? And when I hear what you, for example, are doing and saying, right, and the kind of impact that you're creating, right? What's happening? I am confused, right? As somebody at a distance, right? Because the understanding that has been brought out, right, is that there's a phenomenal amount of communication, effort, infrastructure which has been made available for the
Mm.
skills to kind of pick up, right? And
Correct.
here we are talking where you're saying that as a private institution, the kind of impact that you've been trying to sort of create, right? What's happening, right? Would love to understand that. Where is the disconnect in the entire scheme of things? A lot of these initiatives that were taken, right? Did they not
Mm.
necessarily create the relevant impact, or the expectation of the market has shifted so drastically that one who got trained is not necessarily needed an upgrade, right, of sorts, right? What's really happened? We have to understand that.
Mm. That's a very good question. I think a lot of people from skill development ecosystem knowledge perspective seek answer to this question,
Right.
and lot many are confused that if the what government is claiming that they have given mandates of skilling the youth of India. If that's been the case, then where are those people and why are there not as many available blue collar professionals rather?
Right.
I think the story lies somewhere in execution, I would say. I think in the initial phase in 2014 onwards, when the ministry also got set, I
Yeah.
think it's definitely the right move, and it will continue to build on that.
Right.
However, what we figured is that when you go into tier two, tier three towns, and you
Mhm.
look at the government-funded training programs,
Right.
I think we saw a lot of mobilization of students who joined these courses were not necessarily inclined to get trained for those courses. I think it was also a factor of okay, I'm also going, so a friend also will go, and then the family member also will go. I think from a understanding their need, which trade do they want to go in, what kind of job or career do they want to build in, I think that perhaps got a little missed, and as a result of which you have this youngster who has been given 3 or 6 months of a training, but then
Okay.
he's decided that he doesn't want to pursue that course or doesn't want to pursue career in that
Interesting.
skill that he has taken.
Right.
On top of it, I think what's plaguing the industry the most, I think, is the high level of attrition.
Mhm.
So despite training
Right.
these people are not very let's say high on retention when they join any industry or any role in any
Right.
company.
Right.
It's a mix of both employment related practices as well
Mhm.
as the now the psyche of the gig economy that we are seeing. So
Right.
these guys are very influenced by the digital world that they are in, and for
Mhm.
them, to work at a place for long is not not something which is of a norm which used to
Mhm.
be. So they
Right.
are very unstable in that perspective.
Mhm.
Having said so, I think there are still good pockets of skilling and employment-led initiative by government,
Interesting.
especially if I were to name schemes like DDU GKY. I
Mhm.
think it is run very well,
Right.
very tight leash on the
Mhm.
training ecosystem, and that results in good number of jobs.
Mhm.
But then again, I think the attrition is a very big problem in this industry, and
Right.
that's where I think the government, the employers, and players like us will have to play a joint effort to ensure that these people are well aligned towards the career choices, they
Mhm.
are well trained, and then they are well facilitated into the jobs to continue in those jobs for a decent time, for them
Interesting.
to learn the nuances of what goes on the shop floor, what goes actually when you hit the road, so that
Mhm.
they're not overawed. Oh, this is too difficult, this is too challenging, I can't do
Mhm.
this. So
Right.
this has to be done on a continuous basis.
Interesting. There's a very interesting point and a very important point that you highlighted, right? And what I'd love to understand, right, is when you say what you say, right, is retention being a problem, right? I mean, honestly, if you ask me, right, I mean, we are a country which spends massive amounts of money on prep markets, for example, even when you talk about blue collar, right? I mean, you're
Yeah,
talking about
yeah,
clerical job openings, right? I mean, I
yes,
happen to have spoken with founders, right, who built businesses only tackling government job openings, right? And for the lowest level, right?
yeah,
uh, if you look at us as a country, right, in a certain form and way, everybody wants employment, right? And when you actually tell me that, listen, retention is a problem, right? I find it to be, I'm perplexed, right? I'm confused, right? Why would that be? Is that really a concern there? That people don't necessarily want to work, or the hardships around, say, the employment that they're, for example, engaging in? Because Indians inherently are very, very hardworking, right? Given an opportunity, they
mm,
would want to sort of pursue, they would want to
true,
continue.
true.
Uh, or is it because, the overall employment landscape has not necessarily been very firm? And like I said, right, I mean, there have been challenges, there have been investor side challenges,
Mm.
but also we've been struggling with a lot of, for example, FDI, right? Coming into the country, right? Businesses coming in, establishing bases, because there are many other challenges, right? There are policy
Yeah,
level challenges on that
yeah,
front.
yeah.
Where are we on that, right? Because, and I know it's not an easy one, right? I know there are no clear answers to it. I mean, it's all interrelated, very, very complex, because the stakeholders continue to change, right? But where are we on that, right? I mean, is retention really a problem, or are there other reasons because of which this possibly becomes, an answer and or an alibi, right, to kind of defend the cause? Where are we on that?
No, no, retention is definitely a problem, and I think you hit the nail on the head. That it's there's no single place that you can put a finger that this is the real reason. I'll give you two perspectives.
Mhm.
One perspective is about the industry per se, right?
Mhm.
So if you break the industry in two, which is one is hardcore manufacturing sort of industry,
Right.
which is into blue, and the other is a pseudo blue or a gray collar, where let's say the fresher jobs in service sector kind of
Right.
goes. These are BFSI sales or retail or let's say healthcare kind of industry.
Sure.
Now, in these two, also if you see the retention operates at very different rates.
Right.
Attrition problem is both at both the places,
Sure.
but then in the manufacturing side, the attrition is cyclical.
Mhm.
When I say cyclical, because these are the people who comes across from various parts of the country.
Mhm.
So Bihar, Jharkhand,
Right.
Chhattisgarh, UP. These are the supply states to industry, the
Mhm.
industrial states, which are in
Right.
the west, Maharashtra,
Sure.
Punjab. So what happens in these states is when these people migrate to work, they
Mhm.
go back at least twice in a year for their festival and breaks.
Right.
And that's where, the industry sees a lot of attrition among them, and hence they have to, look for other sources to fill, because industry can't stop, right?
Right.
So from a manufacturing perspective, when I say attrition is a problem, it means that they don't stay in the job for 12 full months. They will take those breaks. And hence, if you break it into quarters, you will see in each quarter, at least 3 quarters, this problem emerges.
Right.
So the industry continuously need to find people to run the machinery and run the industry.
Right.
While if you look at the service sector, the problem of attrition is more pronounced over there. The reason is that, there you have these sales jobs or call center jobs or, healthcare jobs. Now, the demand is again very large, but it looks like a white elephant. So everybody says, oh, great, lot of demand, lot of people, but then people don't stick around. It's a function of multiple things. Now I'm coming to the second aspect of the problem. So one was industry aspect. The second was the economy or the employers' practices aspect. Now here, the employers are not necessarily paying them well. You'll be surprised that we have clients who actually pay 9,000 rupees for a telecaller. I mean, you want to make them work for 9-10 hours at their office, which they will come from some metro or somewhere, and get paid 9,000 plus, of course, incentives. I mean, imagine the problem. That's one. And second, because the scales of pay are not very good, whenever they get an opportunity that a competitor is offering them even 500 or 1,000 rupees more, they will jump ship.
Interesting.
So unless the employers change their practices, this problem is not going, to be resolved very soon.
Right.
And at a macro level, if we look, I think it's all about, how much margins a company wants to make. So if they commit to a workforce whom they can pay well, reduce their margin, I think they will have much better retention. And in midterm, their actually margins will improve because they suffer a lot because of the high attrition, the constant hire that they have to invest into. All that will be gone. They'll have happy customers. But then, this is something which one person can't obviously address. So these are the two answers. Yeah.
Interesting. I understand where you're coming from, right? I think I think that base has to shift, right? I think the possibility of earning, I think, has to sort of improve. And I think employers have to incentivize people more meaningfully, right? You can't continue to keep them on fringe, right? Because they are at the bottommost level and layer in the organization, right?
Correct.
I think they are possibly more critical than the top leadership that you have, which is the heavier side of the largest
scales, right? The scales are always tilted. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
absolutely. So, but Dhiraj, what I would love to sort of understand is, how do you value or how do you view the macros currently, right? Because I mean, and this is a conversation which is going on across, right? I mean, and you are at the forefront of all of this, right? I mean, I'm sure this is something that you're discussing internally, externally, all forums, right? But we've not, for example, as an economy, not significantly contributed to more and more jobs, right? I mean, while there is an aspiration, there's an aspiration, there is an intent, right? Not a lot of that is leading into output, right? There are clear gaps, and these are gaps at a national level, these are gaps at a state level. For some reason, aspiration is not translating into how we would have wanted it to, right? What's your sense of it? What do you make out of this, right? And how would you want it to be? And you could use this as an opportunity to put out a model which could be, which could possibly help the cause, right? For policymakers, out there who are trying to solve for this problem. And this is a big one, by the way.
Sure. No, I absolutely. I think I kind of agree with what you're saying, and I think perception is exactly that. And I think it's also a reason why the media, this kind of stories that you are playing out and we keep on hearing or reading, does create that perception. However, let me also share some facts. If you look at the states which have really swung very, very positively last 1 year, they have improved their unemployment rates. Improved means they have reduced unemployment in their states dramatically. And the reason is very simple, because they have invested heavily into industries.
Right.
And I think with the Make in India initiative by Government of India, which I think has been long overdue from an economy policy perspective, is yielding results. I mean, today, as a company, we are focused very heavily onto manufacturing jobs.
Right.
And trust me, I mean, there are hundreds and thousands of people who are ready for these jobs. The problem is, how do we get access to these people? and
Right.
get them into good jobs.
Mhm.
So I think it's like a mirage sometimes that there are no jobs or there are no people. Actually, there are lots of jobs and there are
Right.
lots of people. I think the problem is that we have not, as an industry in blue collar hiring, as an economy, and that's where we stand out, because that's what we
Right.
believe that our model would differentiate. I think
Interesting.
there has not been a single or a good scalable solution which has been able to match these people
Interesting.
and get them into shake hands. Otherwise, if you look at other sectors again, you'll be surprised that the BFSI sector is growing very rapidly.
Right.
Call center sector is growing very rapidly. Healthcare, we
Mhm.
all know,
That's
has
true.
done tremendous work.
Right.
Logistics post COVID has shot up like anything. I mean, there are
Right.
you find now battery operated logistics services providers coming up every month,
Right.
and they are hiring people like crazy. And
Right. Left
we
and
all
center.
know that right from medicine to food to everything are getting delivered at home.
Right.
So I think it's the best time, I would say,
Interesting.
ever among in the economy in India. And I think with the right set of player and with the right intent, uh, there'll be never a shortage of
Interesting.
jobs. It's
I
an
think. I think.
intent. Yeah.
I think there's a very interesting point that you highlighted, right? I think that's the newer economy point, right? And I think the newer economy, and I think the work from home culture, and I think everything getting delivered will possibly create that mammoth possibility for a lot
Yeah.
of blue collared workers, right?
Yes.
For marginal employment, for example, right?
Absolutely.
To absorb just so much of a population that we kind of have, right? Which is looking for those
Correct.
opportunities, right? But
Correct.
that also walks me into a very important question, right? And this is a more COVID question, right? And how COVID has, for example, transformed the uh, the requirements, right? Now, in a pre-COVID environment, we were essentially in a very inefficient ecosystem, right? Inefficient economy, right? And that was
Hmm.
not just us, but I think globally we were inefficient, right? Because
Yeah.
there was physical that existed. I think digital was trying to sort of make an impact, which is more e-commerce, right? Other forms of engagement and consumption other models of
Right.
consumption that, for example, are there.
Right.
But there was no clear trend per se, right? And I think we always believe that they will coexist, right? They'll keep sort of fighting it out amid themselves, the physical and the digital. But what COVID has done is it's completely disrupted how digital
Yes.
uh, is going to be looked at, right, and consumed.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
it's fast forward us to 10 years from where we were.
Yes.
We're pretty much getting everything delivered at home. But what it has done also is that it's changed the complete requirement of skills expectation, right? As an
Yes.
economy, we just become so much more dynamic, right? The back end, which is say the manufacturing back end, something that you've been alluding to, right?
Yeah.
On a couple of occasions, right? In the conversation, we'll have to readjust to very different kind of an audience, right? Fads are going to fly faster, which essentially means that you'll have to calibrate and recalibrate yourselves very very quickly, right? What's your sense of it? Do you think the skills that, for example, are getting imparted, right, and the blue collared workers that are out there, they'll have to upskill themselves much faster? Are they going to be only limited employment opportunities that are going to come up? The arrangements are going to be of a very different kind. They'll possibly have, because they don't necessarily have the right foundation to understand the output expectation, right, and the consumer expectation and the change that needs to be brought in. Is this going to bring in some sort of a discomfort in the relationship that they have with these, say, the employers? What's your sense of it, right? Because I find it to be scary. I find it to be discomforting. I find it to be an environment which is not necessarily comfortable for people to think and build their lives on, right? It's going to be very erratic, right?
I agree.
That's the only constant that I can kind of figure in this entire scheme of things, right? What's your sense of it? Are we ready to handle the post-COVID expectation pressure and align ourselves, right, for that group, right, from a skill set standpoint? What's your sense of it?
No, I think we are quite resilient as an economy, as a population. I think even during COVID, we saw that the demand of healthcare workers or demand for
Sure.
logistics workers was being met very very quickly. I think
Right.
the youth and the training companies were able to quickly upskill, or rather prepare themselves
Sure.
to jump into this opportunity. And I think digital adoption has improved dramatically, like you
Mhm.
rightly mentioned. Today, the training organizations and the employers are now adopting the online learning management systems very, very openly. Earlier, there used to be always, no, this is not possible. The skilling is always about, imparting skills, which requires use of hand, practical
Right.
trainings, etc. But now they are very, very open to these thoughts, and because of which they are now able to, go and skill people even remote places using
Right.
mobile phones and everything.
Mhm.
Early days, but I think the openness is very much there.
Mhm.
And even the youngsters who are now getting into the skills and with basic knowledge, they are
Mhm.
getting the jobs, and which used to be earlier that they will learn on the job over next 3 to 6 or 1 year time frame. But
Right.
now even employers are now adopting these online training methodologies, whereby they are trying to upskill themselves, upskill their workforce much faster, much more efficiently, and much more regularly than
Mhm.
it used to be earlier. And
Interesting.
I see only positive trends up ahead. I don't see much challenges, to be honest.
Dheeraj, I love your positivity and I love your, excitement, enthusiasm, right? And the belief, more importantly, right, that you have
Yes,
in the resilience of, I think, the Indian citizens, right, at large. And
correct.
absolutely, right. I completely agree with and concur with you that, we are an extremely resilient lot, right? We come up the curve much faster
Yeah, yeah,
out of travesty, right? There
yes,
is a very important question, right? Now, a large part of what you do, you're across 100 cities, right? A large part of what you do, you have a substantial expands across tier two cities, right?
yes,
And you
yes,
understand those areas much better, right? Because you're working very
yes,
closely within many of these, right?
yes,
This question is an offshoot of the earlier question that I asked, right? Now, when you look at so tier one brings in a very different kind of a seriousness, right? Irrespective
yeah,
of whether it's white collared, blue collared, right? There's the people are in these metro and cosmopolitan cities to build and basically a career, save, and that's largely that. Right? The motivation is
right,
very clear, right? But
right,
when you look at tier two, right, the motivation and the orientation is very, very different, right?
yes,
When you look at understanding, there's a huge difference between the foundational understanding, right? Subject matter
right,
expertise, foundational understanding, so on and so forth, right? And like I said, I mean, there's little motivation, and it's tier two and tier three, right? Now, the kind of times that we're entering, which are just super much more dynamic, right? Tier two and downwards required a certain physical nudge for people to adopt to more skills, important skills, key skills,
yes,
uh, right? And at least you can understand, and you could understand the ability of one person's absorption level, right?
correct.
The problem today is when you look at tier two, the foundational understanding is extremely weak, right?
Yes,
To build a layer of skill on top of that, right? Which
correct,
makes it
correct.
industry ready is just so much more difficult, right? I mean, how challenging do you find that to be, or is that is there a shift which is coming, right? That people today in tier two are not necessarily same as they were, say, a couple of years back, right? COVID has made a certain change in how they want to explore. Aspiration is, for example, increasing. Information over there's a lot of information which is now available, which
Absolutely.
essentially
Yeah.
means that they can be there's more seriousness, right? Because
Hmm.
that has just exposed them to so much more possibility, right? What's your sense of
Correct.
it? How do you see this, the tier two behavior, particularly, right, and the seriousness around um, adopting to and building the new skill sets?
So I think I'll answer it in two ways. I think number one, the digital certainly has created that information overload, or rather ease to access
Right.
information much easier. Unfortunately, that's not being used for their career enhancement as much as it should be. I
Mhm.
mean, people are using their mobile phones to go on YouTube and TikTok and while away their time. Uh, and I think from the right information reaching them, the
Mhm.
modes are available, the media is available, and
Right.
I think the number of ITIs and the colleges and institutes that we are currently working with, they are doing their best to get them into the ecosystem to
Right.
start get basic skills and get into the job.
Sure.
But I think what you're making is a larger point as to what next. I mean,
Right.
are they ready for their career growth after that?
Mhm.
So I think that is exactly where we as a company, SkillSKonnect, and through our product Gazab Jobs, are trying to overcome that challenge very, very efficiently.
Mhm.
And we believe that when any youngster in tier two, tier three aspires for any career,
Right.
they will not perhaps have access to the best training or best jobs.
Right.
So it is our endeavor to allow them to start having access to good jobs through us,
Mhm.
number one.
Right.
But then, because they passed out from a certain institute or a
Mhm.
college,
Right.
through Gazab Jobs is where we want to manage their career life cycle, which
Mhm.
means that the same training institute or college should be in a position to influence them after they join their first job. that,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you got this basic skill from me and I help you with this job, but now you have spent, let's say, 6 months or 1 year,
Right.
and I have this additional 3 months course for you.
Interesting.
Come back or take this online from my platform, and
Right.
I will ensure you a better job, or I will ensure you a increase in your salary in the same job.
Very
So
interesting.
I think we need to use digital in the way it should be used, which is to basically skill, enhance their career and manage their career life cycle. I mean, I will take an analogy to what I used to do in insurance or banking
Right.
world. I will acquire one customer and offer him an endowment plan, and
Right.
after 2 years, I'll ping him, hey, you got a child now, take a education plan for him.
Sure.
Hey, you got 45, you better take a term plan or
Mm-hmm.
take a health plan. So
Right.
I would manage a customer life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So we have used the same concept here now, is to manage the career life cycle of this youngster
Right.
who's aspiring to get into a job, and
Mhm.
also continuously upgrade themselves and get better jobs and improve their salary or income,
Interesting.
and to become more prosperous. Yeah.
Dhiraj, what is very interesting, right? What is particularly interesting is that I think you kind of dealing with this challenge in a very holistic way, right? And
Yeah.
I think you have to really break it down piecemeal, right? I think you cannot have a you know the kind of education system, for example, that we have, right, which was just so institutionalized, bureaucratic, archaic in many ways, right? I think now we'll have to change it. And I
Yes.
think that's where I think your role, for example, with Skill Connects, and I think Gazab Job becomes so much more important, right? Because you know unless you bring in that 360-degree angle, right? Unless you bring in those elements saying that, listen, you're doing A, right? The trend is going to change. You're going to require new skills. And here we are, right? As
Yes.
a support system, we
Yes.
understand where you are foundationally, right?
Yes.
Using that, for example, information data to continuing to improve them, right? I think is just so much more important. And I think that from an employer's standpoint, right? I think it's just so much more important, right? Because that inefficiency, that wastage gets done away with, right?
Correct.
And you know that there's somebody who's already taking care of it, right? Well, there are many people who are solving for this challenge, right? But I think base institutions are in a more powerful position to continue to offer, uh, uh, programs, right, which could help students do better
Absolutely.
because of that understanding. And I think that's where this channel becomes just so much more important, right?
It does.
In that sense. And I think that's amazing, right? I think that also talks of how you are, for example, looking at this problem, which is just so much more dynamic. Uh, Dheeraj, I'm going to move to another side of this entire conversation, right? Which is the new emerging possibility with gig tech, right? And I think that's
Yes.
just gotten fast tracked with with COVID,
Correct.
what we've experienced in the last 2 years, right? And with now Omnicon, I think my sense is while there was a little bit of a doubt and tentativeness, right, around if there are certain things that are going to sustain, right, or are
Correct.
we going to go back to normal because we readjust very quickly as an economy.
Yeah.
I think that's not going to happen, right? I think with each passing day, it's getting firmed up. And I think gig tech has a much larger role to play. I think you kind of alluded to it, and we kind of spoke of it, right? There are jobs that are becoming so much more important. Gig is going to take over, right? So, for example, your deliveries and your nurses, right? So you're going to find a lot of that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you talk of gig, right, Dhiraj, the profitability of a platform will essentially be a function of how they source, right? It takes away the ability of the employee to price his or her time, right? People become commodities in the process, right? It's so your ability to earn is directly proportional to the number of hours that you can, for example, put in, right? India has problem of population. We have a problem of too many, is how I call it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are 10 number of people who are chasing for, say, a same opportunity, right? What happens in an environment like that, right? Do you think the motivation will still persist, or will it fizzle out? Because, like I said, right, I mean, there is a population of too many. Navigation and changing careers might not necessarily be a possibility, right? Upskilling requires motivation, right? Because you can see a better this thing. But how do you upskill yourself in very basic pieces, right? Which is going to be the largest consumer, or sorry, largest area of consumption for these skills, right? What's your sense of it? How do you read that?
So are you asking me whether the motivation for a gig economy worker will not be very high to upskill or
Because they're not able to upprice themselves, right? So, for example, I cannot charge, say, a 2,000 rupees an hour kind of a service, right? I'll have to continue
right?
to. There's a defined price, right? I'll have to be available for the defined price. So, for example, an Amazon delivery boy is going to get an X amount of price. for that delivery that he or she makes, right? And that's,
Yes.
like I said, right, directly proportional to the number of hours he or she makes themselves available.
Correct.
What happens in an environment like that?
I agree. I think these are very, very new jobs which have come into the economy, and I think while they are paying well, at least for people who don't have a job, and I think some people are earning really well, leveraging that opportunity. What next? I think if you remember in early 2000, we had a similar kind of a trend when the BPOs hit as an economy, and today we see that almost 36-37% of our economy is largely coming from that service sector, so called.
Yes.
In fact, it's crossed 51% as per last study which I did. But I think BPO still has become a big contributor towards our economy. And we used to call it the what was the word, late night shift or whatever. So people used to think that this is a fad and this will not grow or whatever. But it's a thriving industry today. So I think answer lies somewhere in how the technology will pan out, how business models will evolve. But surely I don't expect everyone to be in the same job of a gig economy worker for long, because these are strenuous jobs. These are not easy jobs. But what I see as an opportunity for people is that there are many gig opportunities coming along the way. So whether it's a logistics, whether it's a healthcare, whether it's a sales, whether it's a call center, whether it's also a low end manufacturing job which doesn't require too many skills, there are lots of options. I think the problem or challenge will be for them to know that these options exist. And I think over the career, people switch many roles or industries. I mean, look at me. I passed out as a chartered accountant, but then I moved into banking, insurance, and today I'm running a digital technology company. So I think answer lies in spreading the right awareness, giving that access to those opportunities, and getting the right facilitation to evaluate. Should I go? Should I switch? If yes, then what are the chances of my success and earning over there? And I think that is where we are trying very consciously to build an ecosystem where these people remain in touch with their loyal institutions or their circle of students or alumni, so that they get access to this multiple opportunities, information, counseling services regularly. And in low strata, this is generally the norm. People generally follow the herd mentality. So but as long as that herd is now more aware, more better prepared, I think the quality of counseling and the choice of career will become much better, as we see.
Dhiraj, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I think in many ways, right? I think we've been able to discuss some very critical macros, right, and some very critical complexities that exist around the space, right? Of skilling, employment generation, and I think for a fragmented market like the one we are, I think this is going to be a much longer term problem, right? I don't think we'll be able to solve it so quickly. Right? I think which essentially means that you'll have to be at work for much longer period of time. This towards the end of our conversation, right? What are would love to understand what are some of the key industries that you think are going to do exceptionally well, right? With the emerging, what are the emerging trends, right? With of course the change in how things are now happening, right? With even inefficiencies getting weeded out, right? What are some of the key industries? You've mentioned of them, right? Some of them, but would love to understand a little more detail, right? Which are the industries that you think are going to do exceptionally well, are going to be the largest job generators for the blue collared workforce? Would love to understand that.
Sure. So I would just add another dimension to it. In addition to blue collar, I think from people passing out as freshers from colleges, I would just cover that category as well. So I think the top 5 would be very clearly logistics. It'll do very well. Healthcare will do fantastically well. I think manufacturing is going to go really ramp up very, very fast. And I think these 3 offer huge opportunities. Among the new age skills, if you ask me, I think the IT area is going to pick up very, very strongly. And I'm not just talking about software, but even hardware. Because as more adoption happens towards digital, you need the hardware, experts or skilled people, whether it's a mobile hardware, whether it's a computer hardware, you need those skills to manage when those hardwares, start to create problems. So I think from a coding and even hardware management, these 5 areas or industries, I think are set for tremendous growth in the next decade. And I think all the institutions engaged in skilling people in these areas will benefit, and so will be the youth.
Interesting. Dhiraj, I think you cannot let go of a founder, right, without asking, his or her, next 2.5, 3 years vision, right? In your case, like I said, right, there's a much larger, deeper task at hand, right? What are the next
Yes.
couple of years like, right? You're across 100 cities already. You're across 75 institutions. There are these physical centers that you already have, right? What are the next
Yes.
2.5 years, right? Because like I said, right now we're setting in. I mean, there are behavioral shifts that are now kind of setting in, right? Especially with the third wave that we've kind of now
Yeah.
entered. Right? What do we see you doing next 2.5, 3 years?
So I think very clearly we have set the agenda in three-pronged strategy. I think
Uh-huh.
first we have started off with hiring as
Yeah.
our mainstay as a job technology company, and I think we'll create a huge impact in the next year. We are personally aiming for affecting 100,000 jobs at least in the next 12
Interesting.
months.
Right.
Then the next target that we have taken on is basically to also uh, add a financial inclusion agenda
Uh-huh.
into our goal. So because these are
Right.
all coming from low strata,
Right.
and today with over 500,000 job seekers with us,
Mhm.
as we are enriching our data with their current salary levels and the retention
Right.
data, uh, more and more banking, insurance, savings companies are approaching us
Right.
to get access to our user base so that they
Interesting.
can help them become more financially independent, save better,
Right.
insure themselves better. So financial inclusion is the next big thing that we will be looking at in the next 12 months in
Right.
a more structured manner. And last but not the least, we are a SaaS company. Our
Right.
main customer are the educational institutions, vocational training skill centers, colleges in tier two, tier three cities, and of course, job consulting. These are the
Right.
SMBs, right? Micro and small and medium sized enterprises. So we have a very clear agenda that we will digitalize them. So
Right.
which means that right from their admissions to
Uh-huh.
delivering of the training to then finally placement, we
Right.
will cover all these three areas through our technology, and we will become a very integral technology partner of that ecosystem,
Right.
and create a very unique digital network that we are building for the country as a job technology, and moving on to financial inclusion, and eventually a full
Interesting.
stack ERP solution company for them.
Interesting. Dhiraj, when we talk of SaaS, right? I think SaaSes are designed to solve for a very particular problem, right? I think when you talk of your role, and I think what we've discussed through the course, I think your role is much larger than that. I think your role is that of empowerment,
Yes,
and I think
yes,
that's just so much more meaningful, so much more deeper. A lot of what you, for example, have spoken of, right? I think is one interrelated and very critical in the larger scheme of things, right?
it is. It
And
is.
I think your role is not limited to just being a technology player. I think your role, like I said, right, is to empower this youth to be driven, and be motivated and choose the right path for themselves.
Absolutely.
Right, and continue to, like I said, upskill, themselves to get into better areas of work, right, and uplift people around them, dependent on them, right. So your job
Oh,
becomes
absolutely.
more meaningful, and, like I said, more serious than
we
than than it's
actually
just
we
a
actually
technology.
call we actually call ourselves entire team calls themselves as COVID warriors or unemployment.
Interesting.
So our current tagline is that we are committed towards your betterment, because every person whom we get a job, we
Right.
know that there are 3 or 4 family members behind that person who gets
Right.
benefited. So
Absolutely.
it's social. There's a very big social impact that we take pride in
Right.
bringing about in every day that we go to work for.
And I think that's how you should talk about yourself, right? And not as a SaaS company, because that just limits pretty much
Sure,
how we sort of would understand you on the outside, right?
sure,
Dhiraj,
sure.
my last question, right? You've been a working professional, and this is more an advice to many entrepreneurs out there, right? But you've been a working professional for a reasonable amount of time, right?
Yeah,
And from that, which is which gets comfortable beyond a certain point, right? It becomes predictable beyond a certain point,
it
right?
does.
From moving out of that to setting up and starting a new entity, right? It requires for a lot of energy, a lot of passion, but it's fulfilling, right? What would that advice or suggestion be for many people who are on the fence, right? And for some reason are not taking that decision, and that could be there are like a bunch of those very clear reasons, right? But I think the most important is the fear, uh, and people to navigate, right? What would that advice be, Dhiraj, right? I'd want you to use this as an opportunity because a lot of professionals watch this, and I would want this to be a point that they should consider and reconsider. What would that be?
No, I think you've answered most fear or financial insecurity or passion. All those things are very very basic ingredients of starting out in case you want to start up. But I think I have realized one thing: you got to be very very patient when you start up.
Right.
You will not get success easy. There'll be a lot of problems, but you cannot presume that this will happen quick or very easily, or rather you will get access to sources very very fast. It doesn't.
Right.
So I think at the bottom you got to be a very patient person. You have to be aggressive. You have to be
Right.
passionate. You have to be hustler to do
Yeah.
all that. But don't let it get to your head, because otherwise it can really stress you out. So you need to practice a lot of patience when you are starting up, because from resources to customers to managing operations, execution challenges, you will be fraught with challenge. But if you have a patient mind to overcome solution and be doggedly at it, then I think your chances of success will be much higher. So practice being patient when you are starting up.
Interesting. And how fulfilling has this been for you?
Immensely. I mean, I did have that fear when I was starting out, and I did working on my financial status at that point in time. And I said, I think this is something which my heart is saying that will work. And I never went out with a plan B, to be honest. I mean, people do say have a plan B, plan C.
Right.
But after the initial quarter, I've never looked back. And I think it's been extremely fulfilling, extremely fulfilling.
It eventually falls in place, like they say.
Oh, it does. It does.
Dhiraj, how I want this conversation to go on, right? This is a subject and this is a topic which is very close to my heart. But I think more importantly, I'm an observer of and that's also equally exciting, right? Of how the shift is happening, right? I think we're witnessing a change that I think none of us could have anticipated ever in our life, right? And this is possibly once in a lifetime. I think this has transitioned a very very large ship into a very different path. While of course it's exciting, it's also scary. These are uncharted territories, right? So I think the discussions essentially help one understand, how the outcome is going to be, and which is just so much more important, right? And I think these are conversations that become relevant for many people to look at, to comprehend the complexity that we kind of exist, we kind of exist in, right? And kind of experience as we go along. And we don't want these conversations to kind of end, but unfortunately, there's a time limit to it. But I look forward to having you with us much sooner, Dhiraj, and discussing some of the finer nuances of the industry, of the challenges, especially in a tier 2 India, right? Because for me, the most exciting trend that I believe is going to play out in the next couple of years is how tier 2 India consumes, right? Because the information availability is phenomenal. The arbitrage is going away. The digital ecosystem is now, the way it's fusing itself with the physical enablement and fulfillment play is phenomenal, right? So my sense is, I think that's a space which is going to come up very well. It's going to offer opportunities like no other, right? Even employment opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
They'll be at par with what we experience in tier 1 cities, right? In many many ways. And I look forward to discussing those with you in our next conversation. Dhiraj, it was a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
It's been a pleasure at my end to have conversed with you, and I think we are aiming at Bharat in a big way, and we'll definitely be having much more useful and fruitful information on the next round for you.
And like I said, you have a much larger role to play. We wish you all the very best, Dhiraj. Thank you so much for taking time out.
Thank you so much, Ashu, for having me. Thank you. Have a good day.